Hey, happy Tuesday. Welcome to Tuesday Tales. So we've got 20 minutes. Let's get into it. So last week we talked about problem solving, and we talked about collecting information, like just as much information as you can possibly collect, right? And a lot of it for you as a horse owner, when you are working with your own horse, is stuff that you know, right? It's just a matter of putting it kind of in your back pocket, so to speak, so that it's there for you to reference as you go through this problem solving process. And so we collect all this information. We, collect information from practitioners. We collect information from the history of the horse and all of this stuff. And when we have gone to professionals and the professionals don't necessarily have an answer, we get to ask questions, right? And, this is really important. It sounds so basic. It's like, just ask questions and you'll find the answer. But really, it's what questions are you asking? Are you asking good quality questions? Also, who are you asking the questions to? Okay? Remember, maybe you remember, maybe you don't, but I've said before, in probably a Tuesday Tale, but also definitely on the podcast, like, the questions you ask are extremely important because of the way your brain works. So, for example, if you believe that there is no solution, that you cannot find a solution, you will not be able to find a solution because your brain is like, wants to be right all the time, okay? So you're like, there is no solution. Your brain's like, yep, there's no solution. Let me find all the proof that there is no solution. As opposed to being like, I know a solution exists. How can I find the solution? And then your brain's going to be like, how can I? Continuously looking. Right? It's going to keep going. It's going to keep trying to find answers. So when you're looking at what questions to ask, we want to ask good quality questions, but also who are we going to ask them to? And I want to address this first because if we're going to address the question to a certain professional, we want to make sure that this professional already believes that there's a solution. And if a professional tells you there's nothing wrong, or there is no solution, or there's nothing, and you want to pursue the fact that there is something wrong here because you just know that you know your horse and this isn't right, or you just feel that there has to be a solution, that this doesn't make sense, that there has to be a solution. You have to be talking to the professionals that believe that a solution exists, because they're just going to shut you down and be like, there is no solution. There's nothing you can do. Or there's nothing wrong, so there's nothing that we need to do. And obviously, that's not going to get us where we want to go. So if your vet or your farrier or whatever is already saying to you, my cat's having the zoomies right here, right now. If the professional wants to say to you, or they are the one that says to you, like, this is this, and there's nothing we can do, or there's nothing we need to do, or whatever, but you feel otherwise, you need to get a second opinion. You need to talk to somebody else. And that can be another professional, that can be a different farrier, a different veterinarian, that can be someone slightly outside of that. And this is where going into Facebook groups and saying, this is what I'm dealing with. Anybody familiar? I did a whole podcast on asking questions in Facebook groups and obviously some people are going to pursue this with a different intention, and some people might be going to these Facebook groups looking to avoid the cost of a veterinarian, looking to avoid the cost of a professional. But in most cases, from what I've seen and the people that I've talked to and that I've tried to help in these Facebook groups, they're looking for information because they haven't found the answer yet. Because their veterinarian says there isn't an answer, because their farrier says that it should be done like this, but they don't understand it. And that's the thing. So the professionals you're working with, hopefully, are the type of professionals that want to educate you. And I'm never going to say, I'm never going to make absolute statements like never, okay? I don't want to make these absolute statements because I don't know every professional on the planet. I don't know every person on the planet. So I can't make these generalized statements. But if your professional is not willing to educate you or cannot explain to you what is going on, to me that's at least a yellow flag, if not a red flag. Because when we learn things, a part of our learning process is being able to explain. And if we cannot explain it to someone else, then there's doubt as to whether we actually explain it or understand it ourselves. that we fully comprehend it and can apply it ourselves. And so if they can't explain it to you, this is an indicator that we should be looking to someone else to get some answers. And when we go into Facebook groups, because there are millions of them with different levels of education, right? So there's first-time horse owner groups, there's just plain old horse questions and answer groups, there's saddle fitting groups, there's farrier groups, there's barefoot farrier, there's barefoot trimming groups, there's barefoot rehab groups, right? Like, the group limit does not exist. And there are even groups out there that are full of professionals, right? There's the horse vets only, like the vets only respond, whatever that group is. That one's great just to follow along and kind of learn things. You can't assume that everything you learn there it's not ever black and white, you guys, right? That's pretty much for anything on the internet. You can't just assume that this is the only answer, it's the end-all be-all answer, but it's a great place to go and learn. And that is my belief for all these Facebook groups. You know, there's other groups that are filled with farriers, podiatrists, hoof professionals. There's groups full of massage therapists, physical therapists, rehab practitioners, where you can go ask. And when you pool this knowledge, you have the opportunity to really just get ideas. And that's what asking questions in this kind of forum is all about. And when you are trying to solve a problem that has been extremely difficult up to this point and nobody's been able to come in and be like, I have your answer, right? That's what you need, right? How can I solve this problem? How can I ask the right questions? How can I find the answer? You ask in a bunch of different places, and all these little tidbits are going to come up. So when we're asking our questions, we want to keep it obviously a little bit succinct, right? We don't want to be putting, it's not even that we don't want to have other people that have to read something really long. It's that we don't want to type out the entire anthology of our animal, right? But we want to be a little bit concise, and we want to say, like, this is the way that I have gotten used to asking questions of my coach, and it just makes a lot of sense because I can give her enough information that if she feels it's necessary, she can ask me questions to clarify things. But for the most part, I just want to give 2 bits of information. We like to call them symptoms, 2 things that is going on that lead to an actual question. So while we can go in and we can, just post like, has anybody dealt with this? This is the situation. This is what my horse is going through. And that'll give you a great variety of answers. It's going to be limited in some type of response because you're not giving the whole anthology of the horse, the whole history, the whole like 9 yards or anything. You're just giving like, this is what's going on. Is anybody familiar with this? But when we get more specific and we say, okay, this is everything I know about this horse. This is what I'm thinking and feeling about it. This is what I'm thinking and feeling about it. And it leads me to this question. Then we get to expand our knowledge base, which in the long run is going to help us with every horse we ever come into contact with. And also could potentially lead us to the answer, right? Problem solving is difficult and it's hard. And it's difficult and it's hard. And it can be emotional. We want to be like, one day we're going to find the exact answer. And what I learn more and more is that because we're dealing with physical bodies, right, that are amazing organisms, that are made of organisms inside organisms inside organisms, right, the way the body interacts with itself, and each piece of the body has its own job and it's its own functioning, it's like its own little city, right? And then it's also connected to all the other cities and all the other organs and all the other pieces and all the things. They're all connected, but they all stand alone. And so when we go down the rabbit hole and we're like, we're going to solve this problem, I just keep finding that we're just unwinding and finding more and more and more and more. And they're not all necessarily like problems, right? They're irregularities, they're asymmetries, things that we could potentially improve. But as we unwind through the process of discovering what's going on and actually finding the root cause of things, the answer to why your horse is the way they are, when we're doing that, we start to gain a better understanding of actually how the body is working and how everything comes together and how it interacts as a whole, but also how the individual piece could be better served. So, thinking of a horse that I've been working with for a couple years, And quite frankly, the only reason that I am regularly working on him is because he is regularly moving up through the levels, okay? His owner is competitive, but not like super competitive. She totally puts her enjoyment of the sport and her horse's well-being above everything else, but she also has a drive to continue to improve. So whether or not goes to 1 show, 10 shows, whatever, she's always taking lessons and she's always working to improve and increase their skill and ability level all the time, which is why I keep working with him, because, you know, we got him past his first 3 massages then just on a regular monthly basis, and he really didn't have any issues until he did. And part of that was because of his work level increasing, and the other part of that was because he had issues going on that it just took time for his body to finally start showing it, right? As we were working through just what we would expect for him to be struggling with as he upped his performance level, we discover, oh, he's got a tooth problem. And I noticed his tooth problem because the way his body normally functions and compensates had changed. And so we fixed the tooth problem, and he goes back to the way he was before, only better, because that was obviously weighing on him. He had just been compensating for so long. He was used to being able to hide it. So we get the teeth fixed, and then he's like totally amazing and getting so much better. But then it's like we kind of hit that plateau again. And it's like, what's going on? And I just started looking at him, and I'm like, you know what? I think that this foot is changing. It's growing differently than the others, and this is not something that we've been dealing with or really looking at. When I go back and look at pictures, I can see that there is a gradual change over time. So we changed his teeth, and then it affected his feet. Because the mouth affects the body, and the body affects the mouth, and the teeth affect the body, and the feet affect the body, and the body affect the feet, and the feet affect the teeth, and the teeth affect the feet. Like, it's all connected, right? So now he's had his feet totally overhauled, and that was an adjustment for him. But again, we're stepping into, but he's moving so much better than he ever has before. So as we move through this, there are problems that we didn't see as problems, right? But what persists is the fact that he was always struggling to move forward, that he had a tendency to bulge out through the right shoulder and drop the left. These things are the same, that he struggled a little bit to hold a strong canter and really get himself collected and up under himself behind. All of those things are the same. And those have all stayed consistent as his body has changed and as we've discovered other problems, right? So sometimes we're not looking at it as like, my horse is lame and these are all problems. Sometimes it's like, we're just not getting the performance, and we don't even recognize that when we're not getting the performance, it is because of the body, right? And that we can affect it and that we can impact it and make a change. So with this particular horse, things have unwound as we've done the body work, as he's continued to up his levels, and things have become more difficult for him. And we just keep finding things that we can improve upon. And that can feel daunting and overwhelming for sure. But when we step back and we just, I've totally approached this with the owner, and she has been fantastic, where I'm just like, I have questions for you as a body worker. I have questions for you. What's going on in his mouth? How long has this been there? Why are we dealing with it now more than we have before? And she can't necessarily answer them. So I'm saying these are questions that I would be asking the dentist, right? And so the dentist is like, yeah, you're right. Let's just pull these teeth and be done with it. Huge difference in the horse. And then when it came to the feet, same thing. I said, listen, I have limited trimming experience. I've taken a trimming class. I trim my own, but we're not talking about complicated things, okay? But this is starting to look complicated, and I have questions. I want to understand why the farrier is trimming the way she is, and not because I'm judging it, because I don't understand. I want to understand why the feet are looking this way. And this happens a lot with feet in particular. I will ask, I can see that there's a disparity between this foot and that foot. Why? Well, that's just how they grow. Not good enough. But why? I understand you can't explain to me why they grow that way. I mean, sometimes Sometimes you can, because the way the horse moves and the way they carry the weight of their body on their feet does absolutely impact the growth patterns and the wear patterns in the feet. And there is a lot that can be said for that. But I need to know it from the farrier. I can't just look at it and interpret it, because I want to understand what that farrier is doing. Because so I say, why are they like this? And they say that's how they grow. And I say, but why? Like, why are we allowing them to grow that way? Because like we trim them. So telling me that this horse has higher heels on this side instead of that side, or has a flare on this hoof and not that hoof, like why? Why are we not correcting it? And when it comes to having one heel higher than the other, there are conformational bone reasons, bone alignment reasons why that may happen. But I have seen a lot of situations where that's not the case. The x-rays do not show a necessity to having this disparity. It's just something that has happened over time. You know, we're busy people. Minute changes. It's like when I'm standing right here, right? Here I am, and I want to make 1 degree of change. Okay? Right here, I've made 1 degree of change. But when you get 100 feet out there, my 1 degree of change is much bigger, right? So when these small disparities add up over time, they become large disparities. And I want to ask the questions. So I want to ask them, one, very respectfully, I just want to understand. And if no one can explain to me, like if there's no medical reason, there's no x-rays to support it, then I want to go that route. And I want to say, well, then let's get x-rays, or do you feel willing to make the change? There's actually been a really great trimmer that has come into the picture for several of my clients who does full-on evaluations of movement and just makes the changes, not recklessly. Like if he actually thought that there was a bony, like there's things you can see on the outside of the hoof that when you are trained as a hoof professional, you just see things that make you go, I think we need x-rays here, right? But anyways, it's about asking the questions, and it's about asking good questions. And so it's about also not accepting any answer that you're given, right? We want to keep pursuing it. And if I tell you something and I explain something to you and you're like, I don't really know if that jives with me. That still doesn't feel right. I don't fully understand it. I welcome you to ask someone else. Not because I'm like, somebody else can tell you the same thing. I don't necessarily believe that, but because maybe somebody else can explain it to you better. Or maybe I'm not right. It's very possible that I could be wrong, right? So we don't want to just stop when somebody gives us an answer and accept it, unless it feels good to you to accept it. And if you don't know enough to determine if this is a good answer or not a great answer, then let's pursue asking more people, right? So ask good questions. We don't want to ask yes or no questions. We want to ask open-ended questions. We want to ask questions that come from an educated place. And I don't mean that come from an educated place as in you got a degree somewhere or you fully understand this topic or you're an expert. I'm saying you're educated about your horse. So put everything you know together and give, this is what I see with my horse. This is what somebody else said to me. I have a question specifically relating to this, right? Like, what is the question then? Put what you know about your horse and what you've learned or picked up or had heard about and put them together to ask the question of how does this equate, right? And obviously I can't give you a super specific example of that because it's going to depend on the information you have about your horse, the situation you're facing, and whatever it is that you may have heard or seen or wonder about. That's going to create the question, right? Question asking is very important. We kind of talked about this at the last intuitive healing session, where I talked about muscle testing and asking your questions. We want to be specific. We want to use, we want to say the things that we mean. So we don't want to be haphazard with our word choices. Do we want to know if they like it? Or do we want to know if it's good for them? Or do we want to know if it will benefit them, right? Good, better, best. Ask questions as best you can. And don't stop asking them. Don't stop asking questions. There's a reason why when we're kids, we just say, why, right? We learn a lot that way. And regardless of whether it solves the problem or we just get educated, it's worth asking the questions. And when you are feeling the most hopeless is when it benefits you the most to ask questions. And don't hesitate to reach out to multiple people. Don't hesitate to use the resources at your fingertips. Use Google, use ChatGPT, use the Facebook groups, because they might not have a solid answer for you, and it might not be the end-all be-all answer, but it might just give you to the next step, to the next question that you can create. That's all you can do, is just keep going. Don't stop. Keep moving forward. So there you go. That's our Tuesday Tales today. If there's something in particular that you want to know, like, ask the fucking question. When it comes to your horse's soundness, functional ability, their optimal performance, what do you feel like you specifically want me to help you with? Where are we at? Ask the questions so I can be here to help. All right, guys. I'll chat with you later.